Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. This Halloween Peekaboo is a spin off of my Floral Peekaboo Tumbler tutorial. I missed detail in cutting the flowers, cutting out the Peekaboo designs in my original, and I really wanted to show you guys everything in between that I missed on the last one. This design in particular really pushed all of my buttons and tested all of my patience. So I was hesitant of composing this because it is a little all over the place, I have to warn you. But I mean, we all run into those, those designs, and typically those are the ones that come out the best, right? So let's get started. Like I said, it's a little all over the place. I totally flaked on recording me applying the glitter. So we're gonna jump right into doing our spiderweb peekaboo designs. If you would like to see how I apply my glitter by the epoxy method and put my first 2 coats of epoxy on, I will definitely link that tutorial at the end of this video and also in the comments below. I was actually working on 3 different tumblers at the same time, so you do see a couple of sets here, but let's focus on the 32 plump from Still Magnolia. For that particular tumbler, I am sizing the largest to a little over 6 inches, and the 2 smaller ones are the same size, roughly about 5 inches each. And then once we have those sized appropriately, I'm just going to pull that over to my cut screen, select vinyl on my Cricut machine, and cut these guys out. I do have a 12 by 24 mat, and that's probably my favorite because even when I am doing designs like this, I know that I'll probably make another in the future. And to save me a little bit of time, I go ahead and cut multiple designs out so that I have them on hand and don't have to go through this process again when I get an order for this tumbler. And also, there's going to be a lot of, I guess, silent moments in this tutorial. I know I usually walk you guys through it through the entire time, but there's a lot of detail that I have had a lot of questions about regarding how to print these things out, and especially the floral designs and where I get my placement from. So there's going to be a lot of silent moments that you guys can just fast forward through if you already know how to do that or you don't want to watch it in its entirety. And but I will do the best that I can to explain all the questions that I have received about this floral peekaboo design. And once these are cut out, I'm just going to weed them. I usually cut them out individually so they're easier to weed. And as you can see, I'm just finding my placement. I usually offset 2 on the front and then put 1 on the back side directly in between. And it's okay if they're not perfect. You can do the whole cup in a peekaboo spider web. You can cut more out and place them all over rather than just the 3 that I do. It's just personal preference, and I like that it gives some empty space so there's a little more of the solid area. I think it gives it really good contrast once the cup is complete. But once you put your decals down, make sure that you press them down really well. So whenever you spray paint over top of them, the spray paint is not going to go underneath any little places that the vinyl may be lifted. And also, I'm using removable vinyl. If you use permanent vinyl, there's a chance that some of the residue will stick behind, and it is way harder to remove. My favorite is by Cricut or the Hobby Lobby brand. Once I have all of my vinyl in place and pressed down, I'm going to take this outside and spray with Krylon Gloss Purple. Gloss is not a favorite, nor is Krylon. And a lot of times it causes issues putting the epoxy over top. So my trick is to go over with Rust-Oleum Matte Clear Coat. But thanks to COVID and job shortages, we cannot find the matte clear coat, so I use semi-gloss. If you take Krylon, spray it on your tumbler, and immediately go over with a Rust-Oleum paint, you will not get the crackling that you typically get with a Krylon paint, or any repelling on your tumbler once you apply your epoxy. And as you can see, I have a spooky season decal here. I did purchase this file from Etsy, and I will link that below. I will warn you, this was one of the worst decals that I have ever had to weed. It was awful, y'all. I cut it to roughly 3.5 inches and then created a circle, not an offset, but a circle to go in behind it. You can see in the video that I attempted to do an offset, and I just decided, no, this is probably not a good idea with this much detail. I'm just gonna make a circle to go in the background. So created the circle, resized it just to offset it slightly. And once again, you see me trying to create two different sizes because I was doing a couple of different tumblers. The smaller of the two did not cut. The only size that I can get to cut for this design is 3.5 inches or above. So just for reference, 3.5 inches and above with a brand new blade on my Cricut. I had to run to the store and grab another blade to cut those teeny tiny letters. And then I did have to apply that decal to the circle and reverse weed it. And if you just caught, I had selected iron on with my settings to cut out that detailed silver. If I use iron on setting, it really helps cut deep into that where I'm not having to kind of finagle it off of the paper. I have just found that that works a lot better with any of the textured vinyl or the metallics that tend to be a little bit thicker. And once again, of course, I have flaked on on removing the vinyl from the tumbler, the spider webs. I told y'all it was all over the place. But it's pretty self-explanatory. You just take the vinyl off once the cup completely dries, and you have your spider web peekaboo. And here you see I used some transfer tape that I have like stuck to my clothing to get some of the tackiness away, because I want it to stick enough to the design to pull it off the paper, but not enough for it to actually pull it off of my textured vinyl underneath, if that makes any sense. So I'm placing it on my textured silver circle, and then I'm going to remove the transfer tape so I can reverse weed this. If some of the letters come off, that is okay. Just sit that to the side and save it. You can take a craft knife or a needle and pull those up, those little intricate letters, and place them on once you are finished weeding. And I just take a little craft knife blade and work with it. It's easier for me to hold, I think, because it's smaller. I start with the inside of the decal and remove it first, and then I will go to the outside to those teeny tiny letters that are the most difficult to remove. Now, while I'm zooming in on my hands, please ignore the fact that my nails look terrible. I tried to be cute and paint my nails like I see in all the other tutorial videos, and it is just not, it doesn't work for me. And to be completely honest, I was so frustrated with this decal because I had cut so many and failed since my blade was not sharp on my machine. At this point, I completely forgot that my nails looked as horrible as they do in this video, but that's okay. It's okay, because the cups turned out pretty, right? So I'm just going to speed this up a bit and let you guys watch how I reverse weed this. It did take about 20-25 minutes for me to get this entire decal done. Like I said, it's a very, very detailed and small decal. So it takes a lot of patience, but like I said, I'm just going to let this play so you guys can see how I weeded the entire design. Now there were a couple of letters that didn't survive the reverse weeding, so I knew that I was going to have a little floral cluster in the area above on the top, so I just removed that letter and placed it where it needed to be. And the inside of the letters, I wait until I have it on the tumbler before I weed those out. It's just easier to me, easier to see with the curve of the cup. So that's how I do it. You can take them off yourself on the original backing. I don't think it really matters. It's not easier either way. It's just personal preference. So I just stand the tumbler up, and I don't put this completely centered. You can see it's a little offset from center towards the top, and just press it down really, really well and remove that transfer tape slowly so you avoid lifting any of those tiny letters up. And once I finish that, I'm gonna hop back over to my program, my Cricut program, and size the floral clusters. Now I purchased this again from Etsy, and that will be linked below. All of these clusters came as you see them here. And again, I was working on a couple different sizes, so I have these sized differently. But we're going to focus more on the larger ones for the 32-ounce plump from Steel Magnolias that we are working on. The gray rectangle is for the print to cut feature. I created it at 6.75 by 9.25, which is the largest area that it will print to cut. And then I place all of my floral clusters inside that and then attach them in the Cricut program. For the 32 plump, the largest floral cluster was roughly 6.5 inches and the smallest being at 2 inches. Make sure your bleed is on when you print your flowers. print those out and then place them on a board to feed into your Cricut. Set the cut dial to vinyl, and you can go ahead and cut that. Just make sure that you have the correct one highlighted on your computer before you do select that the cut button. Now it is so important to have a nice fresh blade for this. When I say fresh blade, if your Cricut seems to be pulling up a lot of flakes of your printable vinyl, then that means that it's probably getting too dull to cut really clean, crisp designs out. There's still going to be a lot of cleanup that you have to do, and you can see here that my blade was not the sharpest. Like I said, I did have to run and go get a new blade. I actually cut these prior to cutting out my little circle, so they are a little messy compared to the other designs that I have made, but you can just watch as I pull them off the paper and how I clean them up a bit before I put them onto my cup. And then also, once you have them on there, you can use your craft knife and clean them up as you go as well. Now, placement, I always put one on the top of my focal point, which is the decal in the center. Usually that is some sort of circle on these designs, and then one on the bottom. I go straight to the back and put my largest floral cluster over top of the back center, and then 4 others on each point around my circle in the center, if that makes sense. I am going to let this play so you can see where I place these. Sometimes just depending on how everything turns out, sometimes I do have to pull some of the flowers off, or I will alter the clusters before I put them on my cup. The biggest thing that I can tell you here is to try to keep them from the top and the bottom rim. In my original tutorial, I do show how I trim them to go around the top and the bottom rims of the tumbler. I have just found after making many of these that it's best to just keep them away from the edges, because a lot of times they tend to pull up a little bit. Then it's really messy and difficult to get them to look really clean. And once you put so much time and effort into a design like this, you definitely don't want to have to start over because you have some vinyl that lifted around your edges. So keep it away from the edges. It'll keep a nice clean bottom and top rim, and you won't have to worry about that in the future once you start applying your epoxy. So once we have our floral designs on the tumbler, you want to make sure they're pressed down really well, and then take Rust-Oleum matte or semi-gloss clear coat and give your cup a good 2 coats so we can cover up all of that vinyl. It helps it stick down a lot better, and it's going to prevent any micro bubbles once you apply epoxy on top of your printable vinyl. Now I am taking Diamond Dust mica from PDB and putting the tiniest little bit in my little extra ink epoxy. That is going to give it shimmer and all the shine with those 2 combinations. And I also did not mention in the beginning that the glitter that I used for the base is Brilliant, also from PDB. I will have all of those linked below, as well as a link to where I got this amazing turner. It is the Tilt design from MH Turners, and I absolutely love it because it's magnetic, so it's so easy to remove and pop back on instead of having to twist into anything. And also, whenever you finish turning, after my 3 hours has gone by, and I can turn my turner off with my little extra ink epoxy, I can just stand it straight up. There's a little dial on the side, and you just stand it straight up. You don't have to remove it from the turner itself. I applied 2 final coats. After the first coat, I did lightly sand and expose the rim just a little bit, and then went over with my final coat, about 35 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy. And look at the results. I'm so happy with the way that this turned out, for it to be such a frustrating design for me. I still made 3 of them and they turned out beautiful. I hope this tutorial has answered lots of questions that I got from my original tutorial. If you have any more, if I didn't answer them, please drop them in the comments below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell to be notified anytime new tutorials drop. We do have a Facebook group, and I would love for you to join to see all of your beautiful creations. I will list that below, as well as links to all of our other social media accounts. Of course, thank you so much for watching. I have linked my previous floral peekaboo tumbler tutorial, so you guys can watch the original if you would like. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.